My name is Emily Hayes, a 26-year-old middle school teacher living in Austin, Texas. My older sister Vanessa and her 14-year-old daughter Sophia moved in with me after losing their apartment, and I thought I could handle the disruption. But one evening, Sophia casually mentioned she'd used my card just for snacks. By the next morning, I discovered nearly $7,800 was gone. When I confronted Vanessa, her response was a shrug and the words, "She's just a kid." I didn't argue. I simply went quiet. But that night, I made a decision that would change everything. To see why it cut so deeply, you'd have to know how I was raised, and how different my sister and I turned out. Growing up in San Marcos, just outside of Austin, I learned early that money didn't appear by magic. My parents weren't rich. Dad managed a hardware store, Mom worked nights as a nurse, but they were steady, reliable people who taught me to stretch every dollar. When I wanted a car at 16, I didn't get one handed to me. I babysat neighbors' kids, bagged groceries, and slowly saved until I could afford a dented but dependable Honda Civic. That lesson, that if you want something, you earn it, stuck with me. By the time I turned 26, I was proud of the life I had built. Teaching middle school wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. I had my own one-bedroom apartment in Austin, a modest savings cushion, and enough breathing room to feel secure. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. My sister Vanessa, just 2 years older, had always been different. Where I was cautious, she was impulsive. In high school she charmed teachers into giving her deadline extensions, and as an adult she relied on charm to borrow money she never paid back. $200 here for car repairs, $500 there for rent. I stopped keeping track when the loans passed 5 figures. Vanessa's motto was always some version of "I'll figure it out later." Later never came. Her daughter Sophia, 14, had grown up in that same environment. She was bright, funny, quick with comebacks, but boundaries didn't exist for her. When she wanted the newest sneakers, Vanessa bought them, even if the rent went unpaid. When she wanted the latest iPhone, Vanessa found a way, usually at someone else's expense. The girl had never heard the word no. 6 months before everything unraveled, Vanessa lost her job as a store supervisor at a downtown boutique. She said the manager had it out for her, but when I pressed, she admitted she'd been late too many times. With bills piling up and an eviction notice on her door, she called me crying, asking if she and Sophia could stay, just for a little while. I hesitated. The memory of past help still stung, but the thought of my niece without a roof over her head gnawed at me. Against my better judgment, I said yes. They moved into my apartment the following week, lugging suitcases, shopping bags, and enough drama to fill every corner of my quiet life. From the start, I tried to establish clear rules. I set aside one shelf in the fridge and labeled it with their names. I explained which household items were communal and which were off-limits. I drew the line at my personal space, my bedroom and especially my desk, where I kept lesson plans, important documents, and my wallet. And most important of all, I told Vanessa firmly that first night, my cards, my accounts, my money, those are never to be touched. Vanessa laughed, waving her hand as if I were being overly dramatic. "Relax, Em. We're family. It's not like we're going to rob you." Her words, casual at the time, would later echo in my head with bitter irony. For the first couple of weeks, it almost felt like things might work out. Vanessa promised she'd job hunt seriously, and Sophia seemed to be settling into her new school. I told myself that the little annoyances were just adjustments. 2 extra people in a small apartment was bound to cause friction. But small cracks quickly widened. One morning I found my expensive face cleanser in the bathroom, half gone. When I asked Sophia, she shrugged. "I just wanted to try it. Mom said it was fine." Another time, I noticed Vanessa wearing my favorite blazer. When I called her on it, she grinned and said, "It looks better on me anyway. Don't be stingy, sis." Then came the missing pens, sticky notes, and eventually even a set of headphones from my desk. Each time I confronted them, the response was the same, Vanessa dismissing it with a laugh or rolling her eyes. "We're family, Emily. Why are you being so uptight? What troubled me most wasn't the stuff itself but the attitude. Sophia had no concept of boundaries. She'd wander into my room uninvited, plop down on my bed, and scroll her phone as if it were hers. And every time I tried to gently correct her, Vanessa swooped in to excuse it. She's just a teenager. Teenagers push limits. You'll understand one day. Yet there were moments that gave me hope. When Vanessa went on interviews, or sometimes out with friends, Sophia and I actually talked. She told me she liked art and coding, that she sometimes felt invisible at school, that her mom's constant money stress scared her. In those glimpses, I saw a thoughtful, smart girl who could thrive if someone gave her real guidance. 2 months in, I thought we had turned a corner. Vanessa let me sit down with her bills and credit statements. I set up automatic payments, made a budget, and even added her as an authorized user on one of my cards, strictly for emergencies. She'd hugged me, teary-eyed, and said, "You're saving me, Em. I don't know what I'd do without you." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she'd finally change. But deep down, a part of me knew better. It was a Thursday in late September, the kind of day that drains every ounce of patience you have. A fight had broken out between 2 8th graders during last period, and I spent nearly an hour writing reports before I could leave campus. By the time I dragged myself up the stairs to my apartment, it was close to 8. I craved nothing more than a shower, some takeout, and silence. Instead, silence was exactly what unsettled me. Usually, I'd walk into noise, Vanessa chatting loudly on her phone, Sophia laughing through her gaming headset, music streaming from the kitchen. Tonight, the place was eerily quiet. I dropped my bag on the counter and found Sophia sitting alone at the dining table, scrolling through her phone with all the nonchalance of someone who hadn't a care in the world. "Hey, Aunt Em," she said, not even glancing up. "I used your card earlier for snacks. Hope that's cool." My heart stuttered. "What card?" She waved her hand casually, eyes still glued to her screen. "The one in your red wallet. I didn't have any cash after school, and Mom wasn't around. Just a couple sodas and chips, like $20. I felt my stomach twist. My red wallet was where I kept my primary debit card, the one linked to nearly everything, rent, utilities, even my paycheck deposit. Trying to stay calm, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The numbers didn't add up. Not at all. There were pages of transactions. Amazon orders, Xbox credits, Sephora charges, DoorDash deliveries, Uber rides. I scrolled faster, my throat tightening. It wasn't $20. It wasn't even $200. The total glared back at me like a cruel joke, $7,842. 16, all gone within 3 days. My chair screeched across the floor as I sat down opposite her. "Sophia. Look at me." She raised her eyes, feigning innocence. "What?" "These aren't snacks. These are thousands of dollars. Games, clothes, food deliveries. Did you do this?" Her face went pale for a second before she forced a shrug. "Maybe your card got hacked or something." I held her gaze until she squirmed. "The truth. Now." She exhaled sharply, then muttered, "Okay, fine. I bought some stuff. But I didn't think it would add up like that. The games just make it so easy, you click once and it charges." My hands trembled as I flipped through the charges. Hundreds of dollars on virtual coins. 2 separate orders from Sephora totaling over $600. A pair of Nike Jordans shipped to my address. Even a food delivery at noon on Tuesday, when I was teaching. "You knew exactly what you were doing," I said, my voice cold. Her eyes brimmed with defensive tears. "It's just virtual stuff. It's not like I stole actual money." My head throbbed. I could hardly process the arrogance in her words. "Where's your mother?" "She went out. Said she'd be back later." I spent the next hour glued to my laptop, documenting every transaction. I printed statements, highlighted charges, and kept a running total. Each number deepened the pit in my stomach. By the time Vanessa finally stumbled through the door carrying shopping bags around 9, I was ready. She blinked at me, then at the neat stack of papers spread across the table. "What's this? Why are you glaring at me like that?" I slid the stack toward her. "Your daughter used my card. She spent nearly $8,000 in 3 days." Her painted lips faltered, then curved back into a dismissive smile. "Oh, come on, Em. I'm sure it's not that much. Kids these days don't understand how cards work. Those games are designed to trick them." "It's theft," I snapped. $8,000. She violated my privacy, rifled through my wallet, and drained my account. Vanessa waved her manicured hand. "Just call the bank and dispute it. They'll refund you." "That would be fraud. Sophia did this knowingly. And you," I jabbed a finger toward her bags, "benefited. These aren't groceries. Those are designer labels." Her smile stiffened. "So what? You make good money. It's not like you can't afford it. Honestly, if you didn't want her to use it, you should have hidden your wallet better." My chest burned. "Are you seriously blaming me? She stole from me, Vanessa. You're her mother. You should be teaching her boundaries, not excusing this." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me how to raise my kid. You have no idea what it's like doing this alone. This isn't about parenting styles. This is about accountability. She committed theft, and you're standing there acting like it's no big deal." The argument escalated, fast. She accused me of being materialistic, heartless, a control freak. I pointed out her years of borrowing money and never repaying it, her pattern of slipping into victimhood whenever anyone demanded responsibility. She deflected, bringing up childhood slights, old grudges, anything to shift the blame. Finally she crossed her arms and snapped, "Maybe we should just leave. Then you won't have to deal with us." My voice shook with fury. "Maybe you should. Because I won't let this continue." The room went quiet for a moment. Vanessa's eyes flickered, calculating. She knew she had nowhere to go, no savings, no backup plan. Her threat was empty, but it still stung. I turned away, exhausted. "We'll talk tomorrow. I need sleep before I say something I regret." As I closed my bedroom door, I heard her mutter under her breath, "It's just money, Emily. Get over it." Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't just money. It was trust, boundaries, and respect, all shattered in my own home. That night, I realized something had to change. This wasn't a mistake I could brush aside. It was a betrayal, and it demanded consequences. Sleep never came that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, the shadows of my blind stretching across the room like prison bars. My mind replayed the confrontation again and again, every dismissive word Vanessa had thrown at me echoing in the silence. I tried to convince myself that maybe she really didn't understand the gravity of what Sophia had done. But the bags she carried, the smug look when she waved her hand, it all told a different story. By midnight, I gave up on rest. I padded into the living room, switched on my laptop, and opened my bank account again. Maybe I'd exaggerated, maybe some of the charges would disappear as pending. But no. If anything, the situation looked worse in the harsh glow of the screen. The transactions stretched back 3 days, not just one like Sophia had implied. On the first day, there were small charges, convenience stores, fast food near her school. By the second, the spending had ballooned into gaming credits and online clothing. The third day was a free-for-all, hundreds on Amazon, nearly $400 at Sephora, and a $300 pair of sneakers shipped with next-day delivery. There was even a $500 drone scheduled to arrive at my address the following afternoon. My throat tightened. This wasn't some impulsive one-time mistake. This was systematic. A test, then escalation, then a spree. Something about the way Sophia had said I used your card nagged at me. Reluctantly, I walked to my desk drawer where I kept a backup credit card and my business expenses card. Both looked untouched. Still, I logged into those accounts. My stomach flipped. There were unauthorized charges there too. Smaller ones, but unmistakable. I went cold all over. She hadn't just stolen one card. She'd gone through my entire wallet, one by one. A horrible thought struck me. I grabbed Sophia's tablet, which she'd carelessly left charging in the living room. She always guarded it like treasure, but tonight exhaustion had made her sloppy. My fingers flew through her photo gallery until I found a hidden folder. And there they were, clear, sharp photos of all my cards, front and back. For a moment I just stared, a sick wave of nausea rolling through me. She hadn't just memorized a number. She'd built herself a personal database of my financial life. It got worse. When I checked her browsing history, I saw it had been wiped. But the cache left behind enough fragments, searches like "Can kids go to jail for using a card?" and "How to buy things online without permission." My chest tightened. This wasn't an accident. This was research. Rage surged through me, white hot. I stormed to the guest room. Light leaked out from under the door. Without knocking, I pushed it open. Sophia jumped, slamming her laptop shut. "Aunt Em. You scared me. What are you doing?" "Just homework," she muttered. "Open it." She froze. When she didn't move, I snatched the laptop and hit the restore button. The screen bloomed with the page she'd been hiding, an online gaming platform, a shopping cart open, items totaling exactly $200. I glanced at my phone, and sure enough, a notification had just popped up, "Charge approved, $200. My voice trembled with disbelief. "You're still doing it? After everything tonight?" Her face crumpled, not with guilt, but with the embarrassment of being caught. "I just wanted to finish building my character. I was gonna tell you tomorrow. You were gonna keep stealing until I noticed again." She started to cry, but I wasn't moved. I took her phone from the nightstand and searched it. More photos of my cards. Dozens of receipts in her email, all marked as "read." She'd been covering her tracks. I left without another word, carrying both her laptop and phone back to my room. My hands shook as I sat down again. Anger, betrayal, exhaustion, they all mixed into one toxic weight on my chest. At 1:30 a.m., another notification buzzed, a decline charge for $1,200 from an electronic site. My bank flagged it as suspicious. I immediately called their fraud department. As I waited on hold, I opened my email. Buried among my work notices were receipts for food deliveries, energy drinks, candy, fast food, orders made during the day when I was teaching. Each listed "Leave with Vanessa" as the delivery instruction. The realization hit me like a gut punch. Vanessa wasn't just passively excusing Sophia's behavior. She was benefiting from it. My memory rewound like a cruel film reel, Vanessa laughing about how family shares, her new shoes last week, her suspiciously fresh salon appointment. She'd known. She'd encouraged it. She'd used her own daughter as the thief while she enjoyed plausible deniability. I thought back further, to when we were kids. Our parents always gave me the harder chores, the higher expectations. "You're the responsible one, Emily. Your sister just needs more time." Vanessa was the baby who got away with everything. I thought adulthood would change that. Instead, the pattern had calcified, me responsible, her reckless, and me covering the damage every single time. But tonight something inside me snapped. I tallied the years of unpaid loans, the bills I'd covered, the groceries I'd bought, the silent sacrifices I'd made. Add this theft, and Vanessa owed me over $18,000. And what did I have in return? A niece trained to see theft as harmless, a sister who laughed at my boundaries, and an apartment that didn't feel like home anymore. The bank representative finally came on the line, kind but blunt. To recover the funds, I'd likely need a police report. My chest tightened at the thought. Calling the cops on my 14-year-old niece felt unthinkable. But what alternative did I have? Let them walk away again. By the time I hung up, it was past 3. I stared at the pile of papers on my desk, my throat raw from holding back tears. My entire body ached from the weight of anger and hurt. And then, through the fog, clarity formed. I couldn't keep rescuing Vanessa from her own chaos. Every time I bailed her out, I wasn't helping her. I was enabling her. I was teaching Sophia that actions had no consequences, that boundaries didn't matter, that money could be stolen if you felt entitled to it. I thought about my students, the way I pushed them to be accountable, the pride I felt when they owned their mistakes. Yet here, in my own home, I'd allowed a toxic cycle to fester. No more. By 4 a.m., I was making lists. Steps to take. Accounts to freeze. Evidence to print. I'd call the bank again in the morning, talk to a lawyer if I had to, and schedule therapy whether Vanessa liked it or not. For the first time, I wasn't going to let her tears or guilt derail me. I looked around my apartment, still littered with their belongings, and felt the faintest stirrings of something I hadn't felt in months: control. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for family is stop protecting them from the consequences of their choices. That night, as dawn crept toward Austin, I resolved that this time, finally, Vanessa and Sophia would face the fallout. When the sun finally rose, I hadn't slept a minute. My coffee sat cold beside a growing fortress of papers, screenshots, and notes. Every detail was documented: dates, amounts, receipts. The chaos that Vanessa and Sophia had created was now lined up in neat rows on my desk like evidence in a trial. I started with my banks. Card after card, account after account, I froze everything. Customer service reps were sympathetic, but I heard the hesitation in their voices. Since this was a family member with access to your home, some of these charges may be considered friendly fraud, one woman explained. Translation: the banks might not cover me unless I filed a police report. The thought made my stomach knot. I couldn't bear to see Sophia's face in a courtroom. But the fact that the option was even on the table drove home the reality: this wasn't some teenage prank. This was criminal. Next, I tackled my passwords. Email, banking apps, even streaming services. I changed them all, adding two-factor authentication where I hadn't before. Each update felt like one more lock on a door that had been left wide open for too long. Then came the discovery that made my hands tremble with rage. Months earlier, when I'd set up Vanessa's budget, she'd given me her logins. She'd never bothered to change them. Curiosity, or maybe fury, pushed me to try. Within minutes, I was staring at her checking account balance: $287.42. Her credit card was maxed, her history a string of boutique shopping, restaurants, and transfers to Sophia's payment app. My chest tightened as I dug deeper. Transfers from Sophia's app led directly to charges in my accounts, money funneled through her child so it wouldn't look suspicious. It was sloppy, yes, but intentional. And Vanessa had signed off on every bit of it. Something inside me hardened. I placed a temporary freeze on her accounts. No withdrawals, no purchases, no way for her to keep draining money she hadn't earned. I did the same for Sophia's payment app, which was technically under Vanessa's name since she was a minor. By the time I finished, both of them were cut off completely. I leaned back in my chair, the apartment eerily quiet except for the hum of the fridge. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But I wasn't done. I opened a new checking account at a bank across town, one neither of them knew about. I transferred a portion of my savings there and set the mailing address to my school, not my apartment. If Vanessa or Sophia thought they could sneak into my mail again, they'd come up empty. As I sat waiting for the confirmation email, I thought back on every time Vanessa had pulled me into her mess. The $600 loan for her car that mysteriously ended up on vacation photos. The time she moved out of an apartment and stuck me with the last month's utility bills. The birthday gifts I bought Sophia because Vanessa couldn't, only to see Vanessa showing off new jewelry a week later. It had always been the same cycle: chaos, tears, a plea for help, and me rushing in to save them. But this time was different. This time they hadn't just leaned on me. They had invaded my home, my accounts, my privacy. They had decided I owed them my stability. By mid-morning, I was drafting an email to a lawyer I'd once consulted about estate planning. This time, the subject line was blunt, urgent, family theft and potential eviction. I outlined the situation, attached documentation, and asked about my options. I didn't want to kick them out, not yet. But I needed to know how, if it came to that, I could do it legally. Then came the part one dreaded most, the letter. My hands shook as I typed. I listed every fact, every charge, every step I'd taken. I told them the freezes weren't permanent, but they would stay in place until we reached an agreement. I laid out conditions: repayment of the stolen money, therapy sessions for both of them, financial literacy classes for Sophia, and a written contract about their stay. No excuses. No manipulation. No, kids will be kids. And I ended it with the truth I'd been holding back for years: I will not be used anymore. I love you both, but I will not sacrifice my own stability so you can avoid responsibility. If you cannot accept these terms, you cannot stay here. I read it over 3 times before printing, the black ink stark against the white paper. I folded it neatly, slid it into an envelope, and left it in the center of the kitchen table where they couldn't miss it. Afterward, I paced the apartment in a haze of adrenaline. My body wanted sleep, but my mind was alive with a new kind of energy. I pulled open closets, checked corners, made sure nothing valuable was left unattended. Every movement felt like preparation for a battle. Before finally lying down, I made one more call, to Dr. Lillian Moore, a family therapist I'd referred students to in the past. She heard the strain in my voice and agreed to squeeze us in that afternoon. The relief in my chest was immediate. This wouldn't just be me against them, there would be a neutral witness. Someone to cut through Vanessa's endless excuses. When I finally crawled into bed, the house was still silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the distant hum of traffic outside. I set my alarm for 9, knowing the storm would break the second Vanessa realized her lifeline had been cut. As I closed my eyes, the letter heavy on the kitchen table, I whispered to myself like a mantra: this isn't cruelty. This is accountability. And it starts now. The sound of shouting jolted me awake. For one dizzy second I thought I was dreaming, but then I recognized Vanessa's voice ricocheting through the apartment. What do you mean my account is frozen? This is ridiculous. I need to buy groceries. I rubbed my eyes, slipped into my robe, and walked to the kitchen. Vanessa was pacing like a caged animal, phone pressed to her ear, her face blotchy with panic. Sophia sat at the table, pale and tense, fiddling with a spoon against an empty cereal bowl. Vanessa's eyes locked on me the second I stepped into the room. She abruptly ended her call with the bank and slammed the phone on the counter. "Did you do this?" she demanded, thrusting the screen toward me. On the app glowed a bright red message: account temporarily frozen. "Yes," I said calmly. "I did." Her jaw dropped. "You had no right. That's my money. How dare you?" "Actually," I replied evenly, "a large portion of that money is mine. Money that was stolen from my accounts. I have the transfers documented, Sophia's app receiving funds, then passing them into yours. Not to mention the deliveries you signed for, the new shoes, the salon appointment." For a split second, panic flickered in her eyes. But just as quickly she shoved it down and raised her voice. "You're making things up because you're angry. So Sophia made a few mistakes. That doesn't give you the right to freeze our accounts." $7,800 isn't a few mistakes," I said. "It's theft." And it wasn't just Sophia. The room went still. I could feel Sophia's nerves vibrating in the silence. She looked down at her lap, then back up at me with watery eyes. Her lips trembled before the words tumbled out. "Mom, just tell her the truth." Vanessa spun on her. "Shut up, Sophia. Not another word." But something inside the girl had shifted. She straightened her back, finally meeting my gaze. I took the pictures of your cards because Mom told me to. She said you wouldn't mind, that you had plenty of money and were just being selfish. Vanessa lunged toward her, but Sophia pushed back her chair with a screech and kept talking. It's true. You told me Aunt Emily owed us because she has this nice apartment all to herself while we had to leave ours. You said it was only fair to take some of her money. The words hit me like ice water. I had suspected Vanessa's involvement, but hearing her daughter say it out loud was something else entirely. Is that really what you told her? I asked, my voice low and shaking. Vanessa's face went red. She's lying, she snapped. She's trying to shift blame. I'm not lying. Sophia's voice cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't just spend on games. I bought the food when you told me to. I got the shoes you wanted. I even paid for your salon when you said you couldn't stand your roots showing. You said Aunt Emily would never notice. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Her mask of outrage slipped, and for the first time in years, she looked caught, cornered with no escape route. I swallowed the lump in my throat, staring at the woman who was supposed to be my sister. You manipulated your 14-year-old daughter into stealing from me. You let her carry the weight of it so you could hide behind excuses. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. For a long, unbearable silence, the only sound was Sophia's quiet sobs. That was the moment everything became undeniable. Whatever illusions I'd clung to, that Vanessa was careless but not malicious, that Sophia was reckless but innocent, collapsed under the weight of the truth. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken my trust, my sense of safety in my own home, and they had torn it apart together. The silence after Sophia's confession pressed down on the kitchen like a storm cloud. Vanessa stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing but no words coming out. Her daughter sat hunched in her chair, tears streaking down her cheeks, staring at me with a mixture of guilt and relief, as if finally telling the truth had lifted a weight from her shoulders. I reached for the envelope I had placed on the counter hours earlier. With steady hands, I slid it across the table until it rested in front of Vanessa. Everything is in here. What happened, what I've done in response, and what has to happen next. Her eyes narrowed. What is this, some kind of contract? Yes, I said evenly. Call it whatever you want. But I'm done pretending this is just a misunderstanding. Your accounts are frozen, every last one connected to the stolen money. I've documented the charges, and I'm prepared to file a police report if I have to. But I'd rather not. This is my alternative, handling it as a family matter. Vanessa's voice rose, brittle and sharp. You wouldn't dare call the police on us. On your own niece. I don't want to, I admitted. But if I can't trust you to take accountability, I'll have no choice. Her face twisted, half anger, half disbelief. This is cruelty, Emily. We're family. We have nowhere else to go. How could you be so heartless? The old me, the one who always bent, who always smoothed things over, might have folded at that. But not anymore. I sat up straighter, my voice firm. This isn't cruelty. This is accountability. Something you've avoided for as long as I can remember. She snatched the envelope and ripped it open, scanning the pages inside. Her laugh came bitter and sharp. Full repayment? Therapy? Classes for Sophia? You expect me to sign this? How exactly do you think I'm going to pay anything back when you've locked up every dollar I have? The freezes are temporary, I replied. Once you agree to the terms, we'll work out a repayment plan. I've already scheduled a therapy session this afternoon. If you take this seriously, we can move forward. If not, I let the sentence hang in the air, heavy with implication. Vanessa slammed the papers down. This is insane. We're not signing anything. We're not admitting to theft we didn't commit. Unlock my accounts now, or we're leaving. Where will you go? I asked quietly. You have no money, no job, and every landlord in town knows your history with evictions. Do you think another friend will take you in after this?" Her mouth tightened. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker across her face. She had no leverage left. Before she could respond, Sophia spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "I'll do it. I'll go to therapy. I'll pay it back. I don't want to be the kind of person who steals." Vanessa turned on her. "Stay out of this. The adults are talking." "No," Sophia said, straighter this time. "I'm part of this. I'm the one who used the cards. I hurt Aunt Emily. I don't want to keep living like this." I felt a spark of hope, so unexpected it almost hurt. Despite everything, she wanted to change. She wasn't beyond reach. "This is ridiculous," Vanessa snapped. "You don't understand what you're agreeing to. It's humiliating." "It's honest," I countered. "Something both of you have been avoiding. Sophia is showing more courage right now than you have in years." Vanessa's cheeks flushed. "You can't hold us hostage like this." "I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm offering you both a path forward. One that's hard, yes, but fair. The choice is yours." The kitchen fell into a heavy silence. I could almost hear the gears grinding in Vanessa's head as she weighed her non-existent options. Her pride battled against reality, and for once, reality seemed to be winning. Finally, she exhaled a sharp breath. "Fine. We'll go to your stupid therapy session. But don't expect me to grovel." "I don't expect groveling," I said. "I expect honesty. And a real commitment to change." Vanessa muttered something under her breath and stormed off toward the guest room, the papers still clutched in her hand. Sophia lingered, wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve. "I really am sorry, Aunt Emily. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway. I don't want you to hate me." I knelt so I could look her in the eyes. "I don't hate you, Sophia. I'm hurt, yes. Disappointed. But I believe you can learn from this. You get to choose what kind of person you want to become. And this," I tapped the contract still lying on the counter, "this is your first chance." Her lips quivered, but she nodded. "I want to do better." As she shuffled back to her room, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The road ahead would be long and full of setbacks, but at least now, for the first time, it felt possible. The waiting room smelled faintly of lavender, soft instrumental music playing in the background. I sat stiffly in one of the cushioned chairs, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Across from me, Vanessa slouched with her arms crossed, her expression daring anyone to challenge her. Sophia sat between us, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. At exactly 1 o'clock, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and calm, watchful eyes stepped into the room. "Emily? Vanessa? Sophia?" she asked gently. "I'm Dr. Moore. Come with me." Her office was arranged in a small circle of chairs, the walls painted in soothing blues and greens. I chose the seat closest to the window, needing the light, the air. Vanessa sank onto the couch with a loud sigh. Sophia hovered before finally perching on the cushion beside her mother. Dr. Moore settled into her chair with a small notebook. "Thank you all for coming. Emily explained briefly what's been going on, but I'd like to hear from each of you. Who would like to start?" Silence stretched. Vanessa's eyes darted anywhere but toward the therapist. To my surprise, Sophia spoke first. Her voice was small but steady. "I stole money from my aunt. A lot of money." Dr. Moore tilted her head. "That's very direct, Sophia. Can you tell me what you were thinking when you did it?" "At first it was just for snacks," Sophia admitted, her eyes still on the floor. "But then I realized I could use her card for other stuff. Games, clothes. It was so easy. Just one click and it went through. And Mom said it was fine." Vanessa sat bolt upright. "Sophia, But her daughter's words poured out, fast and unstoppable. You told me Aunt Emily had plenty. You said she wouldn't even notice. That it was only fair since she lives here alone while we had to move out of our place. So I thought, maybe it wasn't really wrong. Tears welled in her eyes. But then Aunt Emily found out. And she was so upset. And I realized I didn't just take money. I broke her trust. Dr. Moore gave her an encouraging nod. That's a very important realization, Sophia. How do you feel about it now? I feel awful, she whispered. Like I let everybody down. I don't want to be that kind of person anymore. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. Hearing her admit it so plainly was both painful and strangely hopeful. Dr. Moore turned to Vanessa. And how about you? What's your perspective on what happened? Vanessa uncrossed her arms with a sharp sigh. Look, I know things got out of hand. Sophia shouldn't have taken Emily's cards, but the way Emily reacted was extreme. Freezing accounts? Threatening the police? That's not how family treats family. Did you know Sophia was using Emily's cards? Dr. Moore asked. Vanessa hesitated, her eyes flicking toward her daughter. I might have known about some small purchases. Sophia's head snapped up. No, Mom. Don't lie. You told me to take the pictures. You said we deserved some of her money. The air in the room thickened. For a moment I thought Vanessa would deny it again, but something in her face cracked. Her shoulders slumped, her voice dropping to a whisper. Fine. Yes, I knew. I told myself it was justified because Emily has always had it easier than me. Dr. Moore leaned forward slightly. Can you explain that feeling, Vanessa? The belief that Emily has had it easier? What followed was a flood of resentments I'd heard versions of my whole life but never so bluntly. Vanessa spoke of growing up in my shadow, of teachers praising my grades while overlooking hers, of our parents trusting me with responsibilities while excusing her mistakes. She spoke of feeling like she could never measure up, of struggling to make ends meet as a single mother while I built a stable career. She has everything, Vanessa said bitterly. A good job, a nice apartment, savings. And what do I have? Evictions. Dead-end jobs. A daughter I can barely provide for. So yes, I felt entitled to some of what she has. Her words stung, even though I'd expected them. The therapist's voice was calm, steady. And how do you think that belief has impacted Sophia? Vanessa frowned. What do you mean? By telling her it was acceptable to take Emily's money because she wouldn't miss it, what lesson were you teaching her? Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For a long moment she stared at her hands. That it's okay to take things, if you think the other person doesn't deserve them. Dr. Moore nodded gently. And what happens to a child who grows up believing that? Sophia's voice cracked the silence. That's why I didn't feel bad at first. Mom always says people owe her, or that they can afford it. I thought that's just how the world worked. Vanessa looked stricken. Seeing her own behavior reflected through her daughter's eyes seemed to hit her harder than anything I'd said in years. Dr. Moore shifted her gaze to me. Emily, how has this situation affected you? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. It's not just the money. Though that's a lot, too. It's the betrayal. I opened my home to them because they needed help. I've covered bills, bought groceries, tried to be supportive. To discover that not only was Sophia stealing from me, but Vanessa encouraged it, it shattered my trust. And what do you need in order to begin rebuilding that trust? Accountability, I said without hesitation. An acknowledgement of the harm done, genuine remorse, and concrete actions to make things right. The therapist let the silence stretch, letting the weight of my words settle. Then she turned to both Vanessa and Sophia. Are you willing to take responsibility for your actions and commit to repairing the damage? Sophia nodded quickly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes. I want to pay it back. I want to be better. Vanessa was slower, her pride warring with something deeper. Finally, she gave a small nod. I don't want Sophia to think this is normal anymore. So yes. I'll commit. For the next hour, Dr. Moore guided us through creating a structured plan. Vanessa would find a job within 2 weeks. Sophia would take on chores and begin a teen financial literacy program. Therapy would continue weekly, both as a family and individually. Repayment would start small but consistent. And boundaries in my home would be respected, written down in black and white. When the agreement was finally signed, it wasn't legally binding, but the paper felt heavy in my hands. It was a commitment. A beginning. As we stood to leave, Vanessa pulled me aside while Sophia waited near the door. Her voice was quieter than I'd heard in years. I know saying sorry isn't enough. But I am sorry, Em. I let my jealousy turn into something ugly. I see that now. It wasn't a full transformation. Those don't happen in one afternoon. But for the first time, her words didn't feel like manipulation. They felt like the start of something real. Thank you for being honest, I said softly. That's where we begin. The first weeks after that therapy session felt like walking a tightrope. Every step forward came with the risk of slipping back into old patterns. Vanessa kept her word, at least at first. She applied to every receptionist and admin job she could find. A week later, she landed a position at a dental office on the East Side. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and the paycheck was enough to start chipping away at what she owed. Her first repayment to me was only $50, but seeing the cash envelope on the counter felt monumental. For once, she wasn't asking for help, she was giving something back. Sophia changed too. She took over chores without being asked, loading the dishwasher, sweeping floors, even folding laundry. The first few days she complained loudly, rolling her eyes as if each task was a personal injustice. But gradually, her grumbling softened. One afternoon I came home to find the table set and dinner half prepared. She shrugged when I thanked her, but I saw the flicker of pride in her eyes. The financial literacy program started the following week. Twice a week, she met with other teens to learn about budgeting, saving, and credit. At first she described it as boring, but soon she began talking about interest rates and the dangers of debt with an almost comical seriousness. One evening she asked if she could start saving for a new laptop by helping small businesses build websites. I was stunned, not only by the idea but by the initiative. Of course, not everything was smooth. Vanessa slipped into old habits more than once, whining about how unfair the repayment schedule was or complaining that her coworkers were out to get her. When I reminded her of our agreement, she bristled, but therapy forced her to face herself instead of blaming me. And Sophia wasn't perfect either. She still tested limits, sneaking extra time on her phone or trying to dodge chores. But when I called her out, she didn't lash out or retreat, she sighed, apologized, and corrected herself. For a 14-year-old, that was progress. The atmosphere in the apartment began to shift. The tension that had weighed down every corner lifted, little by little. Sunday dinners became a ritual, sometimes clumsy, sometimes tense, but undeniably different. Instead of shouting, there were conversations. Instead of excuses, there were attempts, imperfect but real. It was still fragile, like glass that could shatter at any moment. But for the first time, I could see the outlines of something worth protecting, a chance at rebuilding, not just surviving. 3 months later, the apartment didn't feel like the same place. The tension that had once poisoned every meal and silenced every hallway had thinned, replaced by something tentative but genuine. It wasn't harmony, not yet, but it was progress. Sunday dinners had become a tradition. I'd insisted on it at first, believing that shared meals might anchor us. Now it happened without prompting. Vanessa would help cook, Sophia would set the table, and I'd watch them bicker over seasoning or plates with an ease that once would have spiraled into shouting. There was still friction, Vanessa could be sharp, Sophia still sulked, but beneath it was a thread of cooperation we hadn't had before. Vanessa surprised me most. At the dental office, she'd worked her way from answering phones to handling scheduling. Her manager had praised her attention to detail, and 2 weeks ago, she was promoted to office manager. With the raise came more stability. She started a small savings account, her first in years, and enrolled in a community college class on personal finance. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I bit my tongue. Some lessons had to be lived, not lectured. The repayment plan moved slowly, but it moved. Every payday, Vanessa handed me an envelope. Sometimes it was only $50, sometimes $100. I no longer cared about the amount. What mattered was the consistency, the acknowledgement that what she had taken wasn't free, that consequences had to be faced. Sophia, meanwhile, had thrown herself into her financial literacy program. She loved explaining compound interest like she was unveiling a magic trick. And true to her word, she'd begun building websites, simple pages for local shops, pet groomers, and even one of my colleagues who sold handmade jewelry. She charged modest fees, but she saved every dollar in a clear plastic jar she kept on her desk. Her goal, a laptop that was hers alone, bought with her own money. Watching her work toward it with determination was like seeing a different girl emerge from the ashes of entitlement. Therapy had become a crucible. Week after week, Vanessa faced uncomfortable truths about her jealousy, her excuses, her habit of leaning on others until they collapsed. At first she resisted, snapping or deflecting, but slowly she began to admit her patterns. There were sessions when she cried, when she finally admitted how small and inadequate she'd felt standing next to me all our lives. And I faced my own truths too. I had enabled her, given her soft landings every time she crashed. I called it kindness, but really it was fear that if I stopped rescuing, she would fall too far to ever recover. I had to accept that my help had become part of the problem. One evening in early December, Vanessa sat across from me at the dinner table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "I've been looking at apartments," she said. "There's one not far from the office. Small, but affordable. I think it's time Sophia and I moved out." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Relief and sadness tangled in my chest. Relief because I'd finally get my space back, my privacy, my peace. Sadness because, despite everything, we had rebuilt something fragile and real together. "I think that's a good idea," I said gently. "You've both come a long way." Sophia's eyes widened. "But we'll still come for Sunday dinners, right?" I smiled. "Of course. This isn't the end. It's just a new chapter." When I went to bed that night, the apartment was quiet again, but not the suffocating quiet of betrayal. It was a quiet filled with possibility, with the knowledge that boundaries had not destroyed us but saved us. I thought about those first awful nights, about the shock of seeing my account drained, about Sophia's pale face when she confessed, about Vanessa's fury when I froze her accounts. I had feared those actions would break the family forever. But instead, they had forced us to grow. The money wasn't fully repaid. Trust wasn't fully rebuilt. But change had begun, and for the first time, I believed it might last. As I drifted to sleep, I repeated the lesson that had carried me through: real love isn't protecting people from consequences. It's holding them accountable, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. When I look back, I realize this story isn't just about money, it's about respect, responsibility, and the courage it takes to stop enabling destructive patterns. And it makes me wonder how many other families are silently wrestling with the same struggles. Have you ever had to stand your ground with someone close to you, even when they didn't understand at the time? What gave you the strength to hold firm when it would have been easier to give in? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family, resilience, and the power of boundaries. Remember, the hardest decisions often lead to the deepest growth. Thank you for being part of this journey, and may you find the courage to choose truth and accountability in your own relationships.